Traoré's leadership demonstrates that another approach is conceivable. He is not only questioning the existing system, he is demolishing it. This is why Africa's corrupt elites fear him. Because if Burkina Faso can succeed, so can the rest of the continent. Captain Ibrahim Traoré exemplifies authentic African leadership. At 36 years old, this soldier-turned-head of state has done what Africa's power-hungry elites have failed to do for generations. Live humbly, lead courageously, and establish a nation for its people, not its parasites. His simple lifestyle, used Toyota truck, and disregard of the comforts that come with authority are not purely personal preferences. They pose a direct challenge to the bloated, corrupt system that has choked Africa for far too long. While other politicians use national riches to pay their luxurious lifestyles, buying palaces, private jets, and foreign mistresses with funds intended for hospitals, schools, and roads, Traoré is taking a different approach. And that path is causing shockwaves across the continent. His activities have made Africa's self-serving rulers uneasy. His leadership is a mirror they cannot stand to look into, a model they refuse to emulate, and a call to action that jeopardizes the entire system of exploitation they have established. From Cairo to Cape Town, Ibrahim Traoré's name is becoming synonymous with a new age of African governance, one that values people over personal wealth. Let's be clear. Traoré was not installed in power by foreign influence or backroom dealings. He ascended through the ranks of the military and was thrust into leadership by popular demand after the September 2022 coup deposed the weak and ineffectual Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. Unlike previous leaders, he has not used the position to enrich himself. He has turned down the office's inflated income, preferring to live on his low soldier's salary, which is thought to be less than $1,000 per month. Think about that for a split second. Traoré's wealth is small on a continent where politicians stash billions of dollars in offshore accounts, while their populace suffer. He has no houses in Paris, secret bank accounts in Switzerland, or fleets of luxury cars. His strongest asset is his integrity. His shield is humility. And his actual riches is the trust of his people. While other African leaders travel through their capitals in convoys of armored Mercedes-Benzes, Range Rovers, and Rolls-Royces, each car a monument to stolen futures, Traoré travels through Ouagadougou in a modest Toyota pickup or military truck, the same type used by his soldiers in combat. There are no tinted windows to protect him from the public, and no screaming sirens to force the poor to clear the road for him. Traoré's presence among his people is a thunderclap, a revolution in itself, for Africans who have spent decades seeing their so-called leaders drive in motorcades longer than the water queues in their communities. It demonstrates that leadership is more than just sitting on a golden throne. It is about bearing the weight of responsibility with dignity. Take a careful look at the rest of the continent. Corruption swallows billions of dollars, our money, our future, and the dreams of our children. Funds intended for hospitals where mothers could give birth safely, schools where children could study, and roads and trains to connect nations were all stolen and routed into luxurious residences, designer clothes, and overseas bank accounts. Rather than helping their people, they erect monuments to their selfishness. In Nigeria, a former governor relaxes in a $50 million Abuja palace, its golden gates mocking the millions who perish from a lack of basic medicine. In Kenya, a president's luxurious chopper glides above flooded slums, as the forgotten drown in rising water. In Equatorial Guinea, a dictator's son drives a $2 million Bugatti, while his countrymen beg for a meal. From Luanda's marble palaces to Johannesburg's glass towers, the story remains consistent. Africa's riches does not flow to its people. It is sucked off by plunderers. Allow me to paint you a picture, brothers and sisters. Consider an East African president whose garage contains Lamborghinis, Porsches, and a Maybach so expensive that selling even one might support 1,000 classrooms. Consider a West African oil tycoon turned president whose fleet of private planes, each a floating mansion, exceeds his country's total health care budget. Imagine a Central African strongman throwing opulent birthday parties in Paris that equal the halls of Versailles, while his people drink from filthy streams because their government refuses to install a well. These men aren't leaders. They're vultures swarming over the remains of our stolen independence. Their diamond cufflinks glitter with our mothers' tears. Their imported wines contain the blood of our miners. Their silk outfits are made from the shattered hopes of our youth. Nevertheless, they dare to call themselves Africans. However, they are no different from the invaders who previously governed this land only now. The chains they bind us with are made of corruption, betrayal, and subordination to foreign rulers. While these parasites feast, Captain Ibrahim Traore is sowing the seeds of revolution in Burkina Faso, which are sprouting into thorns in the sides of Africa's greedy kings. Traoré has spearheaded a tireless drive to demolish the corrupt, dependent, and exploitative systems that have plagued Africa for years. To many, he is more than just a soldier turned politician. He is a symbol of a revived African spirit, a man whose bold reforms are shaking the corrupt foundations of government from Dakar to Nairobi. Burkina Faso, a 22 million-strong country, has long been plagued by Islamist insurgencies, economic stagnation, and political instability. The coup that deposed Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba was more than just another military takeover. It represented the people's rejection of a government that failed to protect them, safeguard their resources, and meet their demands. Captain Traoré, a young artillery officer with a reputation for combat bravery and a pledge to deliver stability, autonomy, and self-reliance, entered the fray. But what truly distinguishes him is not his words, but the daring of his acts. He has refused to follow the same script that African governments have been using for decades, asking for foreign help, signing exploitative IMF loans, and giving over natural resources to transnational corporations that plunder the region. Instead, Traoré has turned inward, relying on Burkina Faso's own wealth to fund national development. Look at what he's done. While other African leaders travel to Western capitals, hat in hand, appealing for loans they will eventually steal, Traoré has utilized Burkina Faso's own funds to invest in the country's future. In a breakthrough effort, he obtained $20 million worth of hydro-agricultural equipment graders, hydraulic shovels, and irrigation tools paid for in cash rather than debt. This investment is revolutionizing agriculture, which employs 80% of Burkinabés, and the effects are already visible. In 2024, Burkina Faso will have produced roughly 6 million tons of cereal, a record. The difference is remarkable. While other leaders risk their country's destiny, Traoré is developing an economy that can stand on its own. Social media has exploded with appreciation, with one popular tweet reflecting the mood. While several African presidents are busy securing loans they will later loot, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has secured $20 million worth of equipment paid for with Burkina Faso's own money. But arguably, his most audacious move has been in the gold market. Burkina Faso has massive gold reserves, but for decades, French, Canadian, British, USA, and Australian mining corporations have sucked away the country's wealth, leaving nothing for the people. Traoré is altering that. He nationalized gold refining by establishing a state-owned refinery to ensure Burkina Faso benefited from its own resources. This is more than just money. It's about dignity. It is about informing the world that Burkina Faso will no longer be a pawn in the game of foreign interests. It sends a message that Africa is awakening. Its resources will no longer be depleted while its people suffer. Its leaders will no longer submit to foreign masters while their citizens starve. That is why Africa's corrupt elites and their international supporters dread him. Because if Burkina Faso can succeed, so can the rest of the continent. Africa's wealth belongs to Africans. The implications are seismic. If Burkina Faso succeeds, it may inspire mineral-rich countries such as the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Zimbabwe to reconsider their own dealings with international powers. Traoré's ambition is not limited to agriculture and mining. It includes something even more transformative: healthcare. He is leading the development of a cutting-edge pharmaceutical facility to produce drugs locally. This effort aims to liberate Burkina Faso from its reliance on pricey imported pharmaceuticals, eventually providing affordable medication throughout Africa and Asia. Consider the impact: an Africa that produces its own medication, free of foreign monopolies and the constraints that frequently accompany international aid. It is the type of bold, self-sufficient strategy that Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader in the 1980s, would have advocated. Traoré is not simply renewing this vision, he is bringing it to life. Beyond medicine, his government is establishing a 500-bed national hospital, demonstrating his commitment to actual change. While other leaders complain about frozen Western aid, Traoré demonstrates that true leadership is about self-sufficiency, not dependency. On X, a user said, "You won't see Captain Ibrahim Traoré begging because his government isn't reliant on Western handouts." These initiatives, however, are not just transforming Burkina Faso. They are also sending shockwaves across the continent, exposing the selfishness and complacency of Africa's ruling elite. For decades, corrupt politicians have looted public finances, courted former colonial powers, and enriched themselves at the expense of their citizens. Traoré's disobedience of this system represents a direct challenge to their hold on power. He has taken significant moves to recover Burkina Faso's sovereignty, including abolishing French as the official language, renaming streets, and expelling foreign ambassadors suspected of meddling in local issues. His strategic relationships with Russia, Mali, and Niger through the Sahel coalition usher in a new era, in which African nations set their own agenda rather than seeking Western acceptance. His courageous attitude has struck a profound chord. Africans celebrate him on social media as a leader who is willing to put his people first. Some inflated statements abound, such as the notion that Burkina Faso has totally paid off its external debt, which remains at more than $10 billion. However, the sentiment remains strong. Traoré represents the desire for leadership based on autonomy rather than servitude. His acts shine a negative light on presidents who amass wealth while their subjects struggle. Unlike many military leaders who gain power solely to promote their personal interests, Traoré is utilizing his position to build something enduring. Burkina Faso, under his leadership, is more than just a reforming country. It represents what Africa has the potential to become. His vision of food sovereignty, resource control, and pharmaceutical self-sufficiency dispels the myth that Africa must always beg at the global table. His rejection of IMF financing, World Bank mandates, and France's continued involvement is a rallying cry for a generation tired of empty promises. Will he succeed? The obstacles are enormous terrorist insurgencies, economic strains, and political resistance loom big. However, true success is more than just achieving quick results. It is about planting seeds that will blossom into something unstoppable. If Burkina Faso demonstrates that an African nation can stand on its own, it will create a dangerous precedent for unscrupulous governments across the continent. The people are watching, and Traoré represents a vision of what Africa may be: proud, independent, and free. Make no mistake, Traoré is a nightmare for Africa's political elite. His humble lifestyle reveals their greed. His ancient Toyota is a direct challenge to their premium automobile fleets. His dedication to his people is a mirror they can't bear to look at. They lie awake at night, haunted by one unspoken fear: if he can do it, why can't we? But deep down, they know the answer. They lack bravery. They lack honesty. Above all, they don't love their people. Traoré's Burkina Faso is a mirror that forces Africa's corrupt elite to confront their own failures, and they despise him for it. He exposes their betrayal, their greed, their cowardice. They fear the day their own people look toward Ouagadougou and ask, "Why not us? Why not here?" They know that when that question spreads, their days of unchecked power will be numbered. Africa cannot afford another decade of rulers who live in luxury while their people suffer. Traoré represents the only real path forward, the path our liberation heroes envisioned, but few dared to walk. Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, they all fought for an Africa free from exploitation, both foreign and domestic. At the 2023 Russia-Africa Summit, Traoré asked a question that still echoes across the continent. How can a land so rich in resources remain the poorest on Earth? The answer is not fate, nor is it the fault of the West alone. It lies in the greed of Africa's own rulers. Unlike them, Traoré has chosen a different road. He has expelled foreign troops, severed the chains of neo-colonial dependency, and sought new partnerships not as a beggar, but as an equal. He is building a Burkina Faso that refines its own gold, feeds its own children, and writes its own destiny. This is not Pan-Africanism in empty speeches, it is Pan-Africanism in action. It is self-reliance, dignity, and unity. Now, imagine an Africa where every president follows suit. Imagine leaders who cut their salaries to match a soldier's wage, who trade their motorcades for bicycles, who live not in gilded mansions, but in the neighborhoods of the people they serve. Imagine a continent where money wasted on private jets is redirected to public works hospitals in every district, schools in every village, railways linking Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Imagine leaders who fear the wrath of their people, instead of the people fearing them. Traoré's Burkina Faso is not a utopia. It bleeds from the wounds of insurgency. It stumbles under the weight of sanctions. But it is a spark that could ignite a continent-wide awakening. If a young captain, leading one of Africa's smallest nations, can take these bold steps, what excuse do the resource-rich giants have? What justification can the diamond-clad despots offer? Sons and daughters of Africa, let us not admire Traoré's humility from afar. Let us demand it as the standard. Let his low net worth be not an anomaly, but an expectation. Let his refusal to loot his country be written into the laws of every nation. Let us not simply watch as Burkina Faso rises, let us rise with it. From the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, from the Sahara to the Cape, the era of lavish rulers must end. The age of servant leaders must begin. Captain Ibrahim Traoré is more than a leader. He is Africa's conscience. He is Africa's hope. He is the future this continent deserves. His hands do not hoard stolen wealth. They wield the axe that cuts down corruption, the plow that prepares the soil of progress, the sword that defends true sovereignty. Let his example reduce the palaces of the greedy to rubble. Let it breathe fire into the hearts of the weary. Let it awaken the mighty spirit of a continent that has slept too long under the boots of its own betrayers. In Traoré's Burkina Faso, we do not just see a nation reborn, we see the Pan-African dream rekindled. A vision where Africa's wealth serves its people, where leaders kneel before the will of their citizens, where Africa stands tall, unbroken, unbowed, unstoppable. The Lion of Ouagadougou has roared. The question is, will we roar with him? But before I conclude, let me remind you, corruption in Africa is not a new tragedy. It began in colonial times, when foreign powers looted our lands with the help of local collaborators. It continued after independence, when some of our own leaders turned from freedom fighters to oppressors, treating their nations as personal estates. The betrayal has been relentless. The cost? Over $148 billion lost every single year to corruption, according to the African Union. That is money that could build roads, hospitals, and universities. Money that could lift millions from poverty. Money that could transform our continent. Traoré has drawn a line in the sand. The question now is, who will cross it with him? In Nigeria, decades of oil wealth have been siphoned away by corrupt regimes, while millions endured daily blackouts. In South Africa, grand corruption has hollowed out state institutions, eroding public trust. In Kenya, billions meant for development vanish into phantom projects, while families struggle to afford basic necessities. This is not just bad governance, it is an organized betrayal of Africa's people. Corruption is the reason hospitals have no medicine, why children sit under trees instead of in classrooms, and why roads remain death traps while leaders ride in motorcades of luxury SUVs. It is why foreign powers, through institutions like the IMF and World Bank, continue to dictate Africa's economic policies, offering loans laced with conditions that tighten the noose of dependency and keep nations shackled. But the people are waking up. They no longer want promises. They demand real action. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stands apart from the rest because his loyalty is to his people, not to foreign interests or political elites. He does not just speak on their behalf, he speaks with them, in their languages, in their dialects, in a tone that resonates with their struggles. His military fatigues are not just a uniform, they are a statement. He is in the trenches with his people, not ruling from a distance in designer suits. When he says, "We must free our people from misery," it is not political theater, it is a mission. Under his leadership, communities have been mobilized to fight alongside the military against insurgents. Local militias have been empowered, and agriculture has become a national priority in the push for food security. These are not perfect solutions, and critics point to human rights concerns and the slow pace of democratic transition. But unlike leaders who stall reforms out of greed, Traoré's actions are born of necessity. His priority is survival of his people, of his country, and of the idea that Africa can stand on its own. On January 7, 2025, the world witnessed Africa's admiration for Traoré in full force. Traoré attended at Ghana's President John Mahama's inauguration in Accra as a symbol of resistance, dressed in his typical military attire and holding a weapon at his side. The instant he went onto the stage at Black Star Square, the audience erupted not for a politician, but for a vision of Africa free of corruption, foreign control, and self-serving leaders. Ghanaians, who have a history of revolutionary leadership under Kwame Nkrumah, saw Traoré as a reflection of their own struggles a leader who refuses to bend and dares to dream of a continent where African wealth benefits African people. Africans throughout social media, from Lagos to Nairobi, Johannesburg to Dakar, have lauded him as a new Thomas Sankara, the visionary Burkinabe leader slain in 1987 for opposing foreign exploitation. Traoré, like Sankara, rose to power at age 34. Like Sankara, he promotes self-reliance. Formerly Twitter postings hail him as the model for Africa's future, praising his rejection of Western help and emphasis on indigenous solutions. His presence in Ghana was more than symbolic. It served as a reminder that leadership has the power to inspire and rouse a continent tired of treachery. So, what could African leaders learn from Traoré? First, they must demolish the corrupt mechanisms that maintain their power. This indicates that thieves in high places should be prosecuted rather than shielded. It entails making public expenditures transparent rather than striking secret partnerships with foreign firms. It refers to leadership that serves the people, not itself. To effectively improve Africa, leaders must spend in their people education, healthcare, and jobs rather than on personal palaces. Corruption exists because those in authority allow it, but Traoré has demonstrated that with genuine desire, it can be eradicated. Second, African countries must reject neocolonialism in all of its forms. Institutions like the IMF and World Bank have imprisoned the continent in a debt cycle, pushing governments to privatize resources and cut social programs to repay debts they never should have needed if their riches hadn't been stolen in the first place. Traoré's shift away from these institutions sends a strong message. Africa can finance its own development. Leaders must negotiate trade agreements that benefit their people, not foreign businesses. They must protect natural resources, Burkina Faso's gold, Nigeria's oil, and the DRC's cobalt, not for foreign profiteers, but for the people who live above them. Third, self-sufficiency should be the goal. Traoré's advocacy for indigenous agriculture and industry echoes the wisdom of Tanzania's Julius Nyerere, who recognized that true independence stems from the ability to feed and clothe oneself. Nonetheless, African countries spend billions of dollars importing food, while large fertile territories go uncultivated, an absurdity that must end. Leaders should emulate Burkina Faso's approach, which empowers communities to build businesses from the ground up rather than relying on handouts. Most importantly, they need to listen to the kids. Traoré's emergence is no surprise. He represents a generation that refuses to wait any longer for change. Africa's median age is only 19, but many of its leaders are relics of a bygone era, clinging to power as if it were their inheritance. But the youth are alert. People are marching in Senegal, protesting in Kenya, and rejoicing in Ghana. Leaders have a choice: embrace their enthusiasm and ambitions, or be swept away by the rising tide of discontent. Traoré's road is not without risks. Burkina Faso is still fighting insurgents that control significant areas of terrain. His realignment with Russia has sparked concerns about new ties. His delay in shifting to civilian authority has drawn criticism. These challenges, however, do not undermine his vision. Rather, they accentuate its bravery. Africa's leaders do not need to copy his every choice, but they must emulate his courage, the fortitude to break with the past, resist entrenched interests, and dream of a continent that can stand on its own 2 feet. Traoré's thunderous greeting in Ghana was more than just a moment. It conveyed a message. From the Sahel to the coast, Africans want leaders who will fight for them, not against them. Corruption has drained Africa's resources for far too long, but a revolution based on integrity and service can restore them. Captain Ibrahim Traoré is not the sole solution. but he demonstrates that they exist. The question now is not whether the people are ready. Rather, they have been ready. The fundamental question is whether African leaders are ready to stop looting and start constructing. Do you believe President Ibrahim Traoré is taking the right steps toward progress? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.